सऊदी एयरलाइन, जिसमें टिकट, हज ड्राफ्ट, मक्का और मदीना शरीफ की रिहाइश, ज़ियारात मकामात मुक़द्दसा, एक अदद कुर्बानी, खाना और एयरपोर्ट लंदन तक पहुंचाना शामिल है। फौरन राब्ता करें और सीट्स बुक कराएं। मजीद मालूमात के लिए 0208-514-4690 पर या 077-724-23312 पर राब्ता करें।
योर चॉइस प्रॉपर्टीज, अगर आपने अपना मकान खरीदना हो या बेचना हो, मुनासिब रेट्स पर मकान या दुकान करार पर लेना हो या देना हो, तो तशरीफ लाएं योर चॉइस प्रॉपर्टीज ब्रैडफोर्ड। हमारा दोस्ताना, प्रोफेशनल और तजर्बाकार स्टाफ आपकी मुकम्मल रहनुमाई करेगा। योर चॉइस प्रॉपर्टीज रेजिडेंशियल एंड कमर्शियल प्रॉपर्टीज की मैनेजमेंट और मेंटेनेंस के लिए एक काबिल एतमाद नाम। हमारी दूसरी ब्रांच 564 ग्रेट आउटर रोड ब्रैडफोर्ड 7 में है। अपनी प्रॉपर्टी से मुतल्लिका तमाम खिदमात के लिए आज ही जनाब खालिद महमूद साहब से राब्ता फरमाएं। योर चॉइस प्रॉपर्टीज 370 Gallington Road, Bradford, West Yorkshire, BD 89PA, टेलीफोन नंबर 01274 493 333। योर चॉइस, योर सैटिस्फैक्शन।
And the appointed limit, covering their heads in total humility before one to whom faces bow in sterility. All praise is yours and kingdom too. Hey, labbaik, faces bow in sterility. All praise is yours and kingdom too. Hey, labbaik, labbaik. By him whose house the loving pilgrims visit, responding with ihram and the appointed limit, covering labbaik. By him whose house the loving pilgrims visit, responding with ihram and the appointed labbaik. By him whose house the loving pilgrims visit, responding with ihram and the appointed limit, covering labbaik. By him whose house the loving pilgrims visit, responding with ihram and the appointed limit, labbaik. By him whose house the loving pilgrims visit, responding with ihram and the appointed limit.
So many options, so many views, so many questions. I'm so confused. What do I do? What is the truth?
The truth lies on my show, Search for the Truth. Come join me and we can discover the truth presented by your favourite sisters, Sadia and Mamouna.
Let's use the Quran and the Hadith so we can eliminate all confusion and just have this truth. So come, search for the truth.
Let's not twist the truth and instead search for the wider meaning rather than limiting ourselves to a restricted meaning in our search for the truth.
Search for the truth.
Houses, etc. And I correct, and
Can
what
I just
you
say,
think of that hadith is very clear.
I think I agree with Sadia there. That is a very, very clear narration, which strictly condemns, prohibits and discourages loud zikr in congregation. I'm actually amazed. You were right, Sadia. You have surprised me and you have taken me back. Mamouna, do you want to revisit the concept of loud zikr?
Okay, I was very aware that Sadia would present this narration.
So you were aware of this narration and you still do a loud zikr. This is what makes me really angry. When people are aware of the
If you let Mamouna finish, you were aware of this narration, but
there's a lot of people who object to the congregational dhikr.
They use this narration. Okay.
Not aware or that it's not actually a very authentic narration. And I'm going to go through a couple of points actually with regards to this narration of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu.
Okay.
Firstly, as Sadia said, it is mentioned in Imam Darmi's Sunan. Now, Imam Darmi writes in his chapter of Bid'ah that one of the reporters of this very narration is somebody called Umar ibn Yahya. Some people say it's Amr bin Yahya, but Imam Darmi has written in the Sunan that it's Umar bin Yahya. And the authorities on hadith, the scholars of hadith, such as Hafid ibn Hajar Asqalani, have written that the scholars of hadith agree that the Umar bin Yahya should be rejected as a reliable narrator, as he, since Imam Shu'bah has said that Umar ibn Yahya has fabricated many narrations. Imam Dar Qutni has also said that Umar ibn Yahya is a weak narrator and not reliable, since the narrations he attributed to Imam Malik are both untrue and weak. This is written in Lisanul Mizan, the biography of Umar ibn Yahya by Hafid ibn Hajar Asqalani. So this shows that these scholars, the scholars who have dedicated their entire lives to the study of hadith, have agreed that the narrator, the reporter of one of the reporters of this hadith, this narration that Sadia has presented, is unreliable, is weak, and is known for making up fabricated narrations. Another point I'd like to make is that all the other chains of this narration will all have weaknesses. All the chains have an unreliable or a weak narrator, which has been agreed by the scholars of hadith. And to be honest, I've presented a hadith a number of hadiths from Imam Bukhari's Sahih, which is a much superior authority than Imam Darmi's Sunan. The second point I'd like to make is that there is actually a verse of the Quran, just bear with me one moment, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah 2, verse 114, "And who is more unjust than he who prevents men from the masjids of Allah, Allah's name should be remembered in them, and strives to ruin them?" So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in this verse that the most unjust of people, among the most unjust of people, is he who prohibits men from the zikr of Allah, who prevents men from going into the mosques of Allah, and who wants to ruin such things. Now, Abdullah ibn Masud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, a great companion of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, if we accept Sadia's narration, or this narration from Imam Darmi's Sunan, which has been called as weak and fabricated and false by the scholars, if we are to accept it, we also have to accept that Abdullah ibn Masud radiallahu ta'ala anhu was an unjust man, astaghfirullah al-azim, which I'm not willing to accept, because he was a great companion of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And Abdullah ibn Masud radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a great pious man. He's a very well-known companion of the Prophet ﷺ, and he was aware of this verse, this explicit verse that is telling us, do not prevent the men from going into the mosque, do not prevent them from the dhikr of Allah. Yet this narration goes completely against this verse. The third point I'd like to make is that Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim, I've already mentioned the hadiths in their sahihs that tell us of the loud dhikr that was performed by the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions. Now, could it be possible, can we even think that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud would ignore the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and instead say, this is a bid'ah? Never. It's just an impossibility. It cannot happen. So again, this is another indication that the narration Sadia is presenting must have some weakness. Finally, the last point I'd like to, actually I've got two more points. Hafid Jalaluddin Suyuti says that this narration that Sadia has presented against the loud dhikr cannot be accepted, because if one compares the action of a companion, in this case Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, to the act of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, i.e. the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam did dhikr, the act of the companion must be rejected, because the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam are informing us he did dhikr aloud, the companions did dhikr aloud. It outweighs that. So therefore it outweighs the action of a companion.
Absolutely.
What the scholars such as Hafid Jalaluddin Suyuti have said. Also, Hafid Suyuti adds that he himself, he says, I, Hafid Suyuti, have found a narration in Kitab al-Zuhud, which is written by Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, that Abu Wa'il said that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud stops people from doing dhikr aloud, yet in each meeting I have seen myself that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu has been doing dhikr aloud in congregation. So all these other factors actually indicate to us that the narration Sadia presented is a narration that is false and that should not be accepted. My final point is that if we are to accept that this narration is authentic, which it clearly is not,